is how I think about it. If you're good at custom, take a choice. And it's extreme. Either say no and don't do it and stick to your product, or say yes but charge masses, like multi-million, 5 million for the customization. No way you could F it up. This phrase, build it and they will come. Oh man, no one's coming. Like no one. No, not even your mum's coming. I mean, no one's coming. No one's using this thing. Unless one of the dangerous things about having capital is it gives you fuel for your new ideas when you should just be doubling down on your same idea. Bamboo was the best of times, the worst of times. It was truly the greatest thing I ever did in my career. The lows of lows when, you understand that nothing's coming out. And after it failed, I did spend a couple of months in my bedroom crying.
That's product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I called it the product market fit question.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I mean, the name of the show is Product Market Fit.
Do you think the product market fit show has product market fit? Because if you do, then there's something you just have to do. You have to take out your phone. You have to leave the show 5 stars. It lets us reach more founders and it lets us get better guests. Thank you.
Ned, welcome to the show, man.
Pablo, thank you. I appreciate it. I have been quite a long time listener to your show, so I appreciate you having me on.
That's awesome, man. No, it's great to hear. And, you have a fantastic story. One of those, if I just were to rattle it off, I say $20 million raised, billions of dollars in AUM for your platform, 250,000 users, 3.5 million in revenue. I think anybody would assume that the ultimate, the end of the story is a huge success. But not in startup land, man. It just doesn't always work that way. And this is why we are doing these types of episodes, because if you dig into it, and so many people, Ned, they're just not willing to really share it when it doesn't work, even though 95% of the time it doesn't work, but they don't want to share it. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and being candid with us and sharing it. I had a story like this myself. And I think it's just important for people to see how many things can go right and then things still not end up as a huge win, just because it's such a great learning opportunity. So anyways, Ned, thank you for coming here and sharing this with us. It's going to be great.
Hey, I appreciate it, Pablo. You're right. Every startup person, when they start it, thinks, okay, I know how this story's going to end. I'm going to make billions. This is going to be awesome. And, I believe that for almost all of it. And you have to. And you're right. I think, obviously, look, and I'm happy to share all. I'll take it on the chin for the mistakes we did make, and the ones that we got right. But yeah, ultimately, it doesn't take a lot of wrong moves, and suddenly that door is shut on you pretty hard.
Well, the difference between right and wrong, obviously, there's some things that just never get off the ground, never really work. But the ones that actually, get revenue, get customers, raise some money, the difference between those and the ones that turn into huge successes is often a lot less than you might think. Like a couple of different moves, a couple of different macro situations, things that sometimes have nothing to do with business. So anyways, we'll dig into it, but maybe just let's start with kind of the backstory here. Like, how do you get into Bamboo, this kind of Robinhood Robinhood-like kind of play, but B2B to banks in the first place?
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I'll give you my 1 minute story. So because I think it is always important. I don't know how many people just wake up and think I'm going to be a startup founder. There's always a journey there. So look, I'm 57. You can maybe tell from my accent, I'm from the UK. I moved to Asia when I was 22. So I have been in Asia 35 years. Hong Kong, Singapore, Indonesia, but mainly Hong Kong, Singapore, and, have loved it. I spent 27 of those years in corporate, working in both stock exchange technology, wealth and trading technology. I ran E-Trade. For some of your listeners who are a bit older, they'll remember that Robinhood wasn't the first online broker. E-Trade, Charles Schwab, companies like that, TD from Canada were there as well. And I ran E-Trade Asia, and I got had a great corporate career. And then at 48, I was kind of certainly not retired, but in between jobs, trying to figure out what to do, bit of midlife crisis. And so you mentioned Robinhood. I would see this is 2015. You can see fintech was happening, and I got introduced to the Robinhood founders, and they were out in Asia looking to grow Asia. And I met them, and they were like, maybe you'd be interested to run Asia. Oh, Pablo. And you talk, the choices of life can be thin, man. I remember thinking, what do these kids know? Come on, I can do this myself. And I remember Pablo thinking, how hard can this be? Oh man, did I find out. I could see fintech. This is 2015. I had been in fintech. I had done E-Trade, which was an online broker from the 90s. We hadn't coined the term fintech. I'm a sales guy. I run businesses. Like a lot of founders, we're delusional. We believe we can do anything. So I believed I could
You
do
have
this.
to. I mean, that's the only way. If you don't believe that, you don't start in the first place.
100%. Isn't it? Maybe for a different conversation, there's this kind of, illogical situation that you have to believe you can do it, whereas everything points to the fact you've got no hope at all. And so after I didn't do the Robinhood thing, robo advisory had, in Canada, Wealthsimple, Betterment, Wealthfront. In Asia, the very first guys to try it was a company called 8 Securities. They were my former colleagues from E-Trade. They had built a B2C brokerage. They were now going into robo advisory, and they'd done B2C robo. And they said, Ned, would you give us a bit of advice for 6 months, see if B2B is a thing? And I was like, sure. So I went in, and quite a few financial institutions said, yeah, we'd love this new idea of a robo. But, Pablo, I mean, you're an investor, and I'd be interested in your views. B2C technology and B2B is totally different. Just because, you can't take a B2C firm and just ram it into B2B.
And this was, to be clear, like a B2B to C. Is that how a good way to think about it? Like an engine that then, whatever bank would then push out to their own customers?
Yeah. I mean, look, so at 8 Securities, it was B2C. This was the company that I was at for 6 months. And basically, it was clear that they didn't want to do B2B. I said, I'm going to go off on my own and do it. And so, yeah, what I started was Bamboo. It was B2B to C. So the simplest way to think about it is, if any financial institution, an asset manager, or a bank wanted their own robo-advisor for their end customer, we would build it for them. So the pitch was, you see Betterment, you see Wealthfront, it's going to eat your lunch. You need that. We'll build it for you, for your customers. And we built mainly the technology. So rather than just the portfolio management, we built the application, we integrated it to brokers, custodian. Our pitch was, you don't know how to build these kind of mass retail robo-advisory solutions. Yeah, so that's what we started. And as you mentioned, we grew it. We raised 20 mil. We got close to 20 mil of rev. We had billions of revenue, 250,000 customers, some of the biggest banks in the world. And yeah, but didn't quite make it out of life.
And maybe just as a first question, like what makes you decide to go the B2B route instead of just copying the models that are working direct to consumer and just doing that?
I had been at E-Trade when it was B2C. I knew B2C is hard. Like a little bit of naivety, Pablo. I hadn't really done B2B so much before. I'd done B2C, and I was like, I'm going to have to raise hundreds of millions to support the CAC. I mean, I'd seen E-Trade, what it took. And, when I was at E-Trade, we nearly went bust several times. And that was like a listed company. And I was like, I don't know, man, this looks hard. And 8 Securities that I was at, which ended up getting bought by SoFi, I mean, they were struggling. And the B2C, Betterment wasn't profitable. Wealthfront wasn't profitable. This is 2015, coming into 16. No robo was making money. So really it was that. I think it felt the lesser of two evils, to be honest.
So what's like the first step at this point?
Do you build it, then sell it, or sell it, then build it? I'm a sales guy. No prizes for guessing. I put together a pitch deck, and I was super clear. I got a few Figma screens. It was actually called InVision. The company Figma wasn't around.
Yes, I remember that.
Remember InVision?
100%. I've used it, yes.
100%. So I put together a few InVision screens with a robo-advising looking application. I found a company to build the front end. I then found a company to support the back end. So the back end means buying and selling the ETFs, integrating it. And I took that deck and I said, hey guys, I have nothing. It's going to look like this. But if any of you will pay me to build it, I will build it. And within a few months, I got a $400,000 deal.
From?
Asset manager to build them a robo. Straight out the gate.
And I guess you had relationships before from the E-Trade days and all that sort of stuff, right?
Pablo, people say, oh, why did I start in Singapore? Why did I start in Asia? I mean, look, it's all I know. Like if I turned up in Canada, nobody knows me. I've been selling in Asia for 30 years. Like I don't know everybody, but I know enough people. And absolutely, I think that's a really important in finance, B2B. I'm 57. Some of my peers are running institutions, right? They're running places. So I didn't get the biggest. It was a small company called Crossbridge Capital. And so here's what I had. I'm 3 months in. I have no product. I have a $400,000 deal. And I go out and say, hey, I have revenue pre-product. I mean, look at us.
There's no better place to be. There's no better place to be. That early on?
And so then I raised the seed round of another 400,000 on a safe note. A lot of fan of safe notes. I think they have their trapdoors. And then before I knew it, I had like 800 grand. It was just one employee and a marketing person. And the funny thing was, Pablo, I then employed another marketing person, another salesperson, because I'm not a product guy. And I hate to say I had product market fit, but I'd sold something. And then me and these salespeople would try to find coders to deliver what I had dreamt up to sell.
And did that customer, they pay up front or they committed to buy in?
Half up front, half we said we would deliver within 6 months, and we would get the second half if we deliver. We were like, all right, let's go.
Well, at least you have a clear plan, which is more than what most pre-seed stage startups have at that stage, right?
But Pablo, and this is the interesting part, we were then guided. Our product ended up being quite guided by they wanted slightly different. We were like, what about this? They were paying, and once we got that, before we delivered that, we then landed Thomson Reuters, Thomson Reuters, the data provider. So we landed them, and then we landed Standard Chartered within the first year. So suddenly we're like, and they all wanted something slightly different. And I think this is possibly, and I'll explain why we didn't make it out alive. The single reason is that our product kept getting customized for every customer. And I'll take that blame. I love selling. I love deals. When the customer said, oh, could it do something slightly different? You're actually, so we got a few smaller deals, 100K, 200K deals. And then about a year in, Malaysia's biggest bank offered us a 7-figure deal to build something that wasn't, it was wealth management, but it wasn't exactly what we did. But what are you going to do?
It's a great question, right? Because so on the one hand, I've heard, some people go blanket and they kind of just say, never build custom software. And, the reality is I've had Stack Adapt on the show. They're doing $400 million top line now, and they started with custom software, right? So it's not that black and white. How, since you've gone through it, how do you think about that, right? Where do you, 7-figure deal like that early on is kind of, how do you say no to that, right? So how would you think about it now if you could go back in time?
So we had built some product. We had built a basic white label product with some APIs. And we always, what we did, Pablo? We convinced ourselves that, it's okay, we'll use our APIs. Therefore, we're really selling product. But we were getting, a lot of integration fees. I have lied awake at night and stared at the ceiling, think, what if I'd said no to these custom deals and just sold my product? Would I have been a unicorn in the end? Blah, 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 blah. I don't know what the right answer is, man. And I definitely cried some tears and sweated some stuff over this, because right at the end of our 8-year journey, our product really started to pick up, and we were using a lot of our product. Here's how I think about it now. It's when startups, I've been super open. I'm happy to dive into all the details. Is how I think about it. If you're good at custom, take a choice. It's extreme. Either say no and don't do it and stick to your product, or say yes but charge masses, like multi-million, 5 million for the customization. No way you could F it up on that, because we were charging 100K, 200K, 6-9 months of development. We hired another developer to deliver it. Sure, it was based on our APIs. The middle road is what kills you. The middle road of taking 100K, 200K for customization that takes 6 months. You end up losing gross margin to get this magical ARR that every VC wants. But what happens is, for our first client got live and started to get some ARR, but our second client, it went live, and then they said, oh, we don't have any marketing budget now, so we're not going to market it. We're just going to put it on the shelf. And I'm like, no, dudes, no. I've actually taken a loss on the gross margin because I had to put more effort because I did too much customization to get it live. And here's the thing, it's about to go live and your customer says, oh, I need this one more feature. And you're like, well, no, it wasn't in the statement of work. And as a startup, you say, can you pay for it? They say, well, our yearly budget's gone. And you're like, so what do we do? And they're like, well, it won't go live without this feature. If it doesn't go live, you don't get ARR. If you don't get ARR, you don't get investors from VCs. And that's what I would tell myself. I need to either say no or charge so much for the custom that even if it doesn't go live, we're all happy.
You've earned it, sort of thing. Because the other thing is too, is if you end up having all these disparate kind of semi-custom instances, it's a drag, right? It's a drag on your business because you've got to maintain all that. It's one thing to say, well, what does it really take to kind of get these new features for this customer? Oh, it's not that much. Fine. Maybe you still make some margin on it, but now you got to maintain that, right? For that customer only. And you're supposed to build a scalable business. So You have to, but it's, there's no black and white in startup land, and you kind of have to fake it. You got to fake it to make it a little bit. So it's like,
and what happened with us, and you're right. And I think while it seems so obvious to me now that you build either multi-tenant or single tenant and the way that single tenant works, I didn't come in as a tech founder, but also right after we got Standard Chartered, we got Franklin Templeton, then we got HSBC, then we got Principal Asset Management.
huge brands.
Huge brands. And hey, man, I'm just not strong enough to turn it down, man. I was like,
I don't think I would be either, man.
and you could see, and then we got a 1.5 million raise, then we got a 3 million raise. We were kind of, I hate to say, the darlings. And I pushed very hard on this. I love the idea of sales and brands. We were winning awards on stage. The hype train was running. We were very clear with our numbers. I mean, we're just getting to 1 million of rev, 1.5, but at least half of that, 3/4 of that was implementation. And you know what investors think about implementation. I actually tell founders today, implementation revenue is not money. It's not zero. It's worse than zero.
You have to, you know what, actually, as I'm just talking out loud here, like implementation revenue, you might want to think as like financing, at least from the perspective of VC. It'll get a 0 multiple. It literally will count towards where you're at, right? Like, so when you say I have 2 million in revenue, 1.5 million is implementation revenue. As far as I'm concerned, you're at 500,000 in revenue. Like literally, that's how I would look at it. But it's money to you that you can use to fund things. So you almost should think of it like that. Like it's a way of customer financing, and to the extent that that's where the margins become so important. Because if you take 1.5 million in of implementation revenue that no VC is going to value, and you spend 1.5 million against it to deliver the product, your net financing from that customer is 0. So
and I agree with you, 0, Pablo. But this is nothing I didn't understand in lessons learned. Because you put in your deck, you have 2 million rev. You're actually putting something that's true, but creating but creating an impression, unless you state it so clearly. Unless you state, hey, I have 1.5 million implementation, 500,000 ARR, but quite a few come forward because every startup wants to impress. So you say 2, and then you get discounted even more heavily. So yeah, we found ourselves after a couple of years growing and starting to get ARR and starting to get traction. But probably the hype train had sprung ahead of us with the big logos that we had.
And how do you manage like through that? Like the other thing about enterprise, the other thing about B2B to C, I guess I should say, is getting customers. You mentioned this a little bit. Like it's one thing to get, say, HSBC, whatever, to decide, yeah, let's do this 250,000, 500,000, whatever. That's hard, but it's one thing to do that. It's another thing for them to say, we'll deploy it. And then it's a final thing for them to actually get behind it and get usage on it, which is ultimately like what you truly need to success. How did that part play out? I mean, you had a lot of assets under management, so I assume some of them went right, but how was that part of the equation?
Man, lessons to my younger self, and my younger self is a 53-year-old Ned. Because now I'm a 57-year-old Ned. So here's what I didn't figure out. I was so happy to get a deal that we didn't ask them what I perceive now as a critical question. If you're paying us $1 million to build this for you, what's your marketing budget for it? We didn't ask that question. We should have said, do you have a marketing budget? And in reality, if they say, no, we don't, we're just going to see what happens. Honestly, be super careful, because there's no ill will. It's not like a bank's like, we'll get this startup and not launch their product. Everybody believes, everybody wants it.
Not, yeah, they don't benefit from that. That's right.
There's no benefit. But what we found was, so there's probably 2 or 3 reasons. We had some clients that really did go live, be not just live, but what works. So we had 250,000 end users. The Malaysian bank I mentioned, fantastic, went live. Or, they had 200,000 users on it. Standard Chartered went live. Franklin Templeton, a lot. Number one, you have to deliver it. So on the startup, it has to be delivered. And that's partly startup and the bank together, right? You have to work together, get through security, everything. Secondly, it has to be a good product. Customers have to want to use it and use it quickly. So when it goes live, if after the first couple of months the numbers suck, it's very easy for that to get put on the shelf. And the last thing is, you really want to ask them, do you have a marketing budget? Because, this phrase, build it and they will come. Oh man, no one's coming. Like no one. No, not even your mum's coming. I mean, no one's coming. No one's using this thing unless the bank puts it front and center. And I think, there's uncontrollables. So yeah, the show's called product market fit. We got product market fit in terms of what we built and banks wanting to use it. And with some of our clients, because we got to a few billion of AUM, we got that. But, it doesn't take many that we had some clients 3 years in, It's not live, because things change, things happen, different expectations on launch. We're now so in the hole, yada, 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 the tech. And another lesson we learn in the early days, and if there's an early stage startup listening, you want to get product market fit, so you want them to buy it. In enterprise, you're building out a statement of work, which is what you do. And it's very tempting as a startup to say yes and make the statement of work light and easy to get them to sign it. Oh man, that's just going to put a dagger in your heart later on, because if you are not clear on what you want to build, when it comes to the push and shove of who's paying for that extra feature, it ain't the institution, it's the startup. Not because the institution's big and bad, it's that their budget's been locked down for the year and they don't have another 100K. And if the SOW isn't clear, you're leaving yourself open. And honestly, so the first client I built for, I told you I charged 400. My biggest competitor, when I chatted them about it, they're like, we don't get out of bed for less than 5 million. What are you doing? Did you promise what we built for 400? I'm like, no, it was totally different. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, I think I did. So that's the other thing, you are so keen to get the deal. You are willing to push the boundaries of what you're customized in a good way to make it happen. And for some of them, it flows fine, but the ones that don't, you're going to find yourself, if you want it to go live, and sometimes you can't just walk away from it because, you sign a contract, so you have legal responsibilities. So you got to keep building. And, we kept getting funded. So the interesting thing, Pablo, was we kept getting funded, which meant...
You're saying from investors, from VCs?
From VCs as well. Yeah, we got from VCs, and which meant we could hire more people to do the custom work for the bank to get it live, because we win more logos, and more logos, more money, more VC. But really,
how many people were you at peak?
120.
Wow. Okay. And these are remote, in terms of US, from a US perspective, or those kind of the US payrolls that you got to think about.
Oh, hey, so Pablo, I adore the US. My kids live in the US, but oh my God, I can't hire people in the US. The cost is outrageous.
Because 120 people at 100K, that's a lot.
Yeah. You see, in Asia, I'm going to say, hold on, let me think. In Asia, okay. Obviously, I used to earn more than 100K being a CEO of a finance firm, obviously, but at a startup, didn't earn that. None of us earned over 100K. Not one in the entire team. So in Asia, back certainly in 2016, 17, 18 in Singapore, developers 3K, 4K a month. So 40, 50K a year at the most. In India, it's 20K, so it's not the same. And up until COVID, we were all in Singapore. Unfortunately, with COVID, a lot went remote and we had teams in India and around, but still.
But, I'll say this, like payroll aside, salaries aside, so that it makes more sense. 120 people is a lot of people from a management perspective, right? From an overhead and alignment perspective, when you're still kind of, you've obviously got customers, you've got traction, but there's still an element of we're figuring out what's really this, truly scalable versus, we're just off to the races.
Well, okay, I'm going to, so yes, we kept hiring, developers to build the custom code. We kept having new ideas. We were like, we even did building AI versions of wealth management back then. We built an ESG product. When you have, one of the dangerous things about having capital is it gives you fuel for your new ideas when you should just be doubling down on your same idea. But one thing I'll say, Pablo, while we may not have made it out alive, and in 2019, it's my proudest moment, in Singapore, we won the best place to work in all of Singapore as awarded by Glassdoor and the government of Singapore. Our rating was the highest of any company in all of Singapore, of all of the Glassdoor companies in Singapore. So we built a great culture and a great team. And I remember it was interesting back then. Somebody came to me, he shall remain nameless, but he knows who he is, and was like, do you think we're 3-4 years in, we just raised our $10 million round. He said, do you think we should stop all the custom and just double down on product and half the team now? Because we know what we build works, but if we keep doing this custom thing, we'll keep losing money. And I remember sitting thinking, I wonder. Clearly, I didn't wonder enough.
It's hard, right? It's hard to cut. It's hard to set constraints. Like you mentioned this point around capital, and I find especially, in the early days, constraints set you free, right? In a sense, if you have capital, you have to be very, very mindful to not spend it. It's really hard, and it's very much the exception. And so in a sense, having different constraints, fewer employees, et cetera, I'm not saying that would have solved the problems, but oftentimes it just forces you to hone in on only able to do the most important things, and everything else like has to fall by the wayside because you can't do it. Sometimes that actually can end up in a better outcome. It's a bit of a paradox, but it's something I've seen.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And, we really, because we kept winning these custom deals and our revenue was going up, we were winning more deals and the product, and this was the challenge. We had a team on the product, but when like a custom so the custom was we designed and built a robo-advisor using our API. So we're using some of our product, but we were customizing the integration and certain features. But we would start to pull, when it was like crunch time to deliver, we would take people from our product team. Because what happens is the client would give us their final payment when it went live. And if we hit the deadline, we got a better payment. So we would take people from our product team to the custom delivery, because once it went live, we would get ARR when we did the ARR.
And to do like mainly what, like custom integrations, things like that, that's mainly the custom work?
Yeah, it's partly the custom integration and partly, certain feature sets, wealth management, so we're building a wealth management tool. It's a complex, not just the integration. And, this is live transactional buying and selling ETF, money movements, dividend movements, updated price feeds, that back end world. I used to build stock exchanges and stock trading systems. That back end world is complex. And yeah, and again, you can't mess it up. This is people's money. Like, this is real people's money. So you can't build something that's half-assed. Be like, it's live. Let's give it a whirl. Like, no, there's no, we've got billions of dollars on the platform, 250,000 people. We got, it's Franklin. It's we go, you got your SOC 2, you do it all properly. It all worked. And
what, Ned, what would you say was the difference between the banks, like the Malaysian one, Franklin Templeton, et cetera, where they really pushed it out and they got many users, consistent users that were happy with it, and the banks that either didn't push it out or maybe even better ones, like the ones that went live, but just didn't put enough effort behind it? Like, what was the difference between those two customers?
there's no one, geographical or size or anything. One of the key things is the top management, the CEO really behind it. So, for example, Franklin did a lot with us, and they invested in us from the CEO. The Malaysian bank, I remember the CEO was into it. I remember we deployed for Standard Chartered in Kenya and Uganda. And the CEO, Standard Chartered Kenya, and we deployed without even going there. Over 50,000 people in Kenya are saving for a better life on technology we built. And I'll tell you what happened to it. They're still doing it today. So even the company didn't get alive, the ending was interesting. The CEO got on the phone when we first signed the contract on Standard Chartered Kenya. And he was almost teary, Pablo. He was like, we have to do this for our customers. This is a must. We need to make sure that people can save for a better future. And we believe in everybody. Are we together? And that was the consistent thing. If it was, this is just do not even get me started on POCs. If it was like a POC, the POC will develop into something great. No, what? No one gives a crap. The defining thing to me was that the institution really wanted it. It wasn't do you remember in 2016, 17, 18, all these, incubator accelerators at these big companies were doing all these POCs? Come on, man, they must all be dead. Surely, like, how many came out of there alive? And it's not the fault of anybody.
Oh, it was always like it's like the innovation team,
Yes, the innovation labs.
From the true, like, if there's no buy-in from the business units or the executives, who, maybe just to follow up to that, like, who were you selling into mainly? Like, who is the lead on these projects on the customer side?
So, because I'm old and I have been selling a long time, I have a simple philosophy. You always call the CEO day one, right? You never call lower. You call the CEO every single time, even if you don't get through, shoot for the stars, you'll land on the moon, right? So in general, we always go C-level, head of CEO, head of revenue, head of global, so for us, we're building wealth management, head of wealth management, head of business.
Because the ROI we haven't touched on, like the ROI for a bank is what? Is it extra AUM or is it like retention on their customers? Like, what's the main thing you were selling?
The main thing we were selling, and I love your question because, let's face it, when you have technology as a startup, you're either saving money or generating money. That's it. If you can't describe, then there's no point. Our pitch was this, for banks and asset managers, these mass retail customers really struggle to use you. The onboarding's hard. You have minimums. And what's going to happen is the betterments and wealth funds are changing the world to make saving for your future accessible. Our pitch to you is those customers, while they're very low margin and not much revenue today, they probably won't come back to you if you lose them today. So our pitch to you is win these low AUM customers in scale using the technology we build, because in the long term, they will be sticky with you if you can show them today. So that was our pitch. It is to not lose customers to the betterments in the wealth front, but to also play in the game of winning that new customer base that right now, a lot of these guys were still using paperwork. I started in 2016. They're doing, paper signups for stuff. A lot of these markets maybe not as advanced as the US. So that was our pitch.
I'm going to ask you for a small favor, a tiny little favor. In fact, it's not even, now that I think about it, it's not even really a favor for me. I'm actually trying to help you do a favor for you. Just hit the follow button. You won't miss out on the next episode. You'll see everything that we release. If you don't want to listen to an episode, you just skip it, but at least you don't miss out.
It's funny you mentioned paperwork. Like you mentioned Wealthsimple earlier. In the early days, I remember they had to actually file paperwork for everybody that signed up to an app because it was mandated. So the world has certainly changed a lot. And the other thing I'll mention, and you reaching out to the CEO, I love that, because I think one element that is hard to remember, like as a startup, you're the opposite of an enterprise. Like it's 3 people, it's 5 people, like you're in one little unit, right? And you're trying to sell it to this behemoth. And it's hard to sometimes imagine what it must be like there, especially if you haven't worked at a large company. And one of the things, and I haven't, right? But speaking to many founders who have sold into that or worked in there, like what you have to realize is most of these initiatives, strategic initiatives, like there might be 10,000, 100,000 people who work there, but there's only like a dozen brains that can carry forward a strategic decision. And there's only a set number of strategic initiatives that actually matter at any given time. There aren't 10,000, there's like 5. And so if you can't find a way to be that, you will never get the timeshare. You might get somebody's budget, right? Because there's budget all over the place. You might get budget, you might get implementation, but you won't get pushed. You won't get that kind of, it's not just marketing budget, but just like the head share that you need to succeed in the B2B2C kind of motion, unless you are at the highest levels. You have champions at the C level and above, and not above, but like around there sort of thing. Otherwise, yeah, it's just gonna be a challenge.
Your point about having, say, 5 champions, so critical. And at the end of this, hopefully I can tell you a little bit of what I'm doing now, but selling B2B today, sure, I can go to the CEO of a big bank because I know them, and they might be like, yeah, we'd love to use you. But underneath there is a head of revenue, a head of finance, head of compliance, head of security. And there's 2 ways you can sell them. You can just go and pitch them. But if they don't know you in your little startup, you better have built your brand. Bamboo, we had built a brand. Our brand, we built Wealth Tech, and we used to say, Wealth Tech lives here. I had a podcast, a newsletter, LinkedIn. My newsletter was Wealth Tech Sucks. And I'm like, we're making it better. We had podcast, newsletter. I was on LinkedIn. Pablo, we won 28 startup awards. And people used to be like, you guys are amazing. What they didn't know, Pablo, I entered over 300. I just didn't put on my website the 272 I didn't win, right? Of course. But it's partly a game. But what I was playing, I wanted to get in people's brains really clearly that if they were buying Wealth Tech, Bamboo was the place to be. And we had conversations and webinars and talks. And what I found was it created champions. So to your point, if you just have 1 or 2 people in that organization, it's not going to work. You need, one of my friends was applying for a US visa the other day. I was like, how did you get it? He's like, you know what the lawyer said to me? I said, what? He said, that person in immigration, it's not US immigration you're talking to. It's one visa person, a human. And you want to appeal to them. You want to make their job as easy as possible. Make that dude's job as easy. Think it on a human level. So I used to think about it with these large banks. What on a human level do most of these people want? And the biggest thing is B2B. What they don't want is risk. You know the phrase, no one gets fired for buying Microsoft, right? It's super hard so you've got to build champions by building brand, building relationships, using all the different avenues. And I think we signed, we had Saudi Arabia's biggest bank. We had Brazil's biggest bank. In America, at one point, Pablo, we had a sticker that said Bamboo available everywhere apart from the Antarctica. And we had clients in every continent apart from Antarctica. And, and maybe we we lost a bit of focus. We were winning, we won Saudi's biggest bank, Brazil's biggest bank, Franklin, Principal, Germany, we had across Asia. We were winning a lot. And, it was probably a little, we got a little head of steam up there and we were like, oh my God, we're going to dominate the world. Let's go. But we customized a little bit in each market. And when it worked and we were getting funded and money, it probably obscured our vision to the slightly not so stable foundations. Because, hello, we were not flying business. I was flying middle. You know what? So one of my favorite moments, I flew from Singapore to the San Fran on United, nothing against American Airlines, but they're not as good as Asian or other airlines. I didn't even pay for the upgrade to the aisle seat. I sat in the middle seat for 23 hours. And then I stayed in Motel 6. And when I saw the investor, he's like, where are you staying? I'm like, on Motel 6. He's like, are you actually staying in Motel 6? I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, I'm staying in, I didn't actually quite realize when I booked it out. I didn't know how shitty it was, but we were trying to keep all hotels to $100. And if you're in the Valley, $100.
That's tough in the Valley. Yeah.
100.
That's called like the street.
I tell you what, it's Motel 6, man. This is 2017, 18. And,
this is like an ad from Motel 6. It's real shitty, but it's real cheap, Like,
it's real shitty. But hey, look, to be fair to Motel 6, it was vaguely clean. And, I'm still here. But yeah, I think there's this sense that, as, we weren't doing crazy things with the money, but it's that lack of focus. We tried to win in every country, and that means we'd kind of end up with clients everywhere, but then we had slightly different teams for that, slightly different customization. We kept telling ourselves, and it was based on the APIs, we were reusing our APIs, but it used to be 80% of our APIs, then 50%, then 30%. We'd try to keep it up. And our product, which was like just a straight use of a white label, never quite was getting traction. But our API customized business was, getting traction. Like a lot of startups, it's easy to look back and go, okay, we should have just focused. At the time, we were winning deals, getting to billions of dollars at AUM, getting money not thrown at us. I mean, I was working hard to get it. But I don't, looking back on it, we probably weren't building the stablest of ships.
And so maybe let's kind of fast forward to like the the beginning of the end sort of thing. Like when do you start seeing that things aren't as rosy as you might have thought? When do you start feeling that, and why and how?
Man, I can almost tell you, not to the day, but pretty close. I think, I think as a founder, you're always wondering, right? You never quite know. And I could tell, look, our ARR wasn't what it needed to be. Like, we weren't completely delusional. We knew our ARR, and we could start to feel we really had
because
to get
of that 3.5 million, was that ARR or was that accounting implementation?
What 1.5 was ARR, 2 was rev. So really, but for Asian companies, there still weren't many Asian fintechs doing even 7 figures of any revenue. But it was early 22. I was going to say America's coming out of COVID, but certainly Asia was still kind of locked in COVID. But I did a trip, and we were trying to raise our next round. So we had raised like 1, then 5, then like 12, so we're almost up to 20. It's like, I'm going to raise 25 million. And the times before when I'd raised it, it hadn't been that, I hate to say that hard, but within 2 or 3 months, we got our money. And you know what, Pablo? You convince yourself you're a genius. You're like, it's nothing to do with the 0 interest rates and money everywhere. It must be me.
And was it US VCs or was it VCs in Singapore that you'd raised from?
Both, but mainly US.
Okay. Which were some of the VCs?
Franklin Templeton but it was mainly Franklin Templeton in a private equity firm, then Wavemaker in Singapore. And then when we went to raise, I came trying to raise 25. I play poker, and when I play poker, I believe you can look at the person in the table. I remember going into the rooms of these investors, pitching my 25 million round, and the market. This is like early 22, and you can see that the market, froth was coming off.
Yeah, it was starting to shift pretty quickly,
and I could feel it, man. I was like, oh shit! I came back after like 3 weeks. I'm like, I said to my kind of finance co-founder, I'm like, dude, I don't think we're getting this. And then, we had 25 at this valuation. All of a sudden we're like, how about 20 of this? How about 15 of this? And when you're backpedaling, No one, nobody wants a back
It's not
pedal
the
deal,
beginning
right?
of something good. That's right. That's right.
You do your best to talk it up, and I think it was there and somebody told me afterwards, Pablo, I've really loved this phrase now. We had maybe 9 months runway, and someone told me afterwards, I think this phrase for anyone who's listening, when you have 9 months runway, as a founder, the days are long, the months are short. And I don't think there's any single better way to describe the 18, 20-hour days, the lack of sleep. When I say 18, 20-hour days, I'm not trying to be macho about it. The reality is when you're having dinner, you're still thinking about it, right?
That's
It's not
right.
it's not outside
Exactly.
your head. It's only when you're sleeping.
It's all consuming. That's the thing. Like people know, like 18 hours at the computer, but it's not that. It's just you're driving, you're thinking. You're about to sleep, you're thinking. You're eating, you're thinking. Like
And then what starts to happen is that 9 months became 6. I'm like, man, we got to cut, and you have to cut really quickly because every day you don't, it costs to cut, right? It costs. But for us to cut, what it meant was, because a lot of our team was doing custom integration, means we're going to lose revenue. And, we got a term, like, all the stories. Before we kind of raised, got term sheets done, got a term sheet, had it, and it was pretty much at level. So it wasn't a down round, but it was at level.
flat.
And it got away from us for all the reasons of human life. I'm a karmic person. It is what it is. All
But
love to
what
everybody.
happened? Like you tried to close it, it just kind of went away, or
We tried to close it, and they were like, "Oh, we're a couple of weeks of DD, and the market was just souring." And they're like, "Oh, we think we might struggle at this." And I did the wrong thing, Pablo. I said, "Oh, I can come down to any rate you want." They're like, "All right, now we really don't want you."
we want you to be reasonable, but not that reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. All right, dude. I think you just sealed your fate. Cheerio.
And when was this, by the way? Because timing does matter. Is this late 22 now, or
Late. We're getting into mid to late 22. And
yeah. The winds are really turning like post June. It was just crazy. I mean, people saw it. Q1, people still dancing. Q2, people were like, I don't like this anymore. And by Q3, it was like, no, we're out. Like it was pretty crazy.
it was, and look, it really. I never blame macro. I have this kind of really strong belief. If you're the captain of a ship and it sails home victorious, it was the crew. If you sink it, it's you, the captain, but it's never the wind. It's never the wind. The wind is the wind, right? There's nothing you can do about the wind. You just have to figure it out. But what happened was, you said we actually died twice. So at 22, we ran out of money really hard. We ran out of money. I love this phrase. We ran out of money really hard. You either run out of money or you don't. So
1-0.
let me rephrase. We ran out of money. And it was a really difficult time. Like, I think as a founder, we all go into this with this, dream and belief, and we don't imagine the kind of mental turmoil that, you go through when, you have 100 staff and you just know that this is, well, I didn't have 100 by then, we've gone less, but that, I remember by this time, I thought 9 days runway was a luxury,
Oh my God. Because so in that time, you have 9 months, you try and raise, then it becomes 6 months. You're like, okay, let's cut. You start to cut, but you can't really cut without cutting revenue. So you're just kind of, that runway is that runway. I mean, unless you raise, you kind of can't really stretch it.
Yeah. No, you're dancing into it. You're really dancing. And, we did have some ARR that wasn't dependent, but we were done. Again, the days are long, the months are short. We probably, if I look back, on that 9 month date, we should have just chopped so much of it. And we still had some, we were doing 3 mil rev, of which some still had some negative margin, wasn't great, wasn't as nice. We could have cut to the 1 million of really good ARR rev, got rid of everybody, taken the fact that the business had to reset, start again. Braver man than me needed to make that decision. I couldn't get myself to do that. And maybe I didn't see it. And we then had a full dilution. One of our investors, put in enough bridge. We cut 70% of the staff. We cut all of our marketing, came out of our office, still kept quite a few, told a few, some of the customers that was not working. We had to let them know that we weren't going to continue. But interestingly, we were still kind of darlings in the market. Not darlings is the wrong word, but, the internal turmoil that, and look, the business, it's not that we did anything wrong or whatever. We were just struggling. We were just trying to make money in an environment whereas before, you didn't need to make money to raise money. Now there was just no choice. Like it was. And so we got to our investors. We had a big dilution. We basically were given a year to be profitable. The investor said, look, we'll dig you out of this hole. We'll give you enough to get through it. And Pablo, when I said I had 9 days runway to salary, like I mean it. Like I'm staring down the whole barrel of it.
And how many people were you now?
70.
30? 70? Okay.
60. No, maybe 60. 60. And then after that, we got to 30. We went down to 30.
What was that like, by the way? Like, I always remember I went through layoffs. It was less people, but similar kind of percentage, right? It was like 2/3 of the staff in a day. And it was just this feeling of like two things. One, you work so hard to find, like every single one of those people was 10 interviews, was 100 resumes, just to put round numbers on it. You work so hard to get them, to keep them, to fully ramp them. You obviously build relationships on top of the productivity piece, and then you like go with them, and on top of that, there's the second piece, which is it's just like, we at Gym Track, for example, we kept going for 2 years after that mass layoff. But when I look back at that story, like Gym Track kind of died that day. I mean, the wind was sucked out so hard out of that balloon. It was almost, I credit the ones that can come back, because you as a founder, like the dream lives in you. And when you go through something like that, at least for me, I'll talk personally, like when I went through something like that, the dream was dead in my brain. And so how could you make it into reality? We brought a new professional CEO. We tried to make it, he certainly tried to make it happen. I try to help, but the dream really kind of died that day. I don't know if it was similar for you, but it's, I don't wish it upon anyone, but I do think you kind of don't know what it's like unless you go through something like that.
Yeah, well, look, man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. It is a brutal experience. We had a lot of layoffs then. It was hard, and it was interesting. You asked, what did it feel like when we finally shot? We did a lot of layoffs right at the end, and I had to talk to 20, 30 people on one day, and I was sitting in the room one by one. I'm a huge believer. You speak to everybody. There's none of this mass email. You speak to every single person one by one. And I was trying to keep it together. I'm quite an emotional dude. And there's one dude, a coder, who had been throughout the whole thing, had always kind of never asked me what was going on. But, the staff are not stupid. They know we're struggling for payroll. They know things are hard. They can see it. And he'd always, during that time, had just taken me for a cup of tea every so often and said, never want to talk about work. Just have a cup of tea. We'll talk about other things. But he knew it. Like, he knew what he was doing. He was giving me 10 minutes away. And he walks in the room and I burst into tears. I just burst into tears because there was something so like, we'd had this, as mentioned, in 2019, we won the best place to work. We had the top rating on Glassdoor. Honestly, I was going to say it, Pablo, I don't love technology. I love people. Like, I absolutely adore people. And I get it. This is a first world problem, right? It's people with bigger problems. But you're right. Like, yeah. And I remember going home, and again, in the end of the day, it's not about me. Like, it's about these people. And, so I'm an ultra runner. I run 100 miles at a go. I'm Singapore's champion ultra runner. I had never been so tired, man. I have never been so drained of my soul as that. And, I'm quite an advocate for founder mental health now, because I don't think you can, mine is, fine. But I think there were times there where I remember one time, not when we laid off people, when we had almost no money left. And I was going to have to maybe, I want to jump ahead, but we had 1 year then to be profitable. So we'd done some layoffs. And you said, Pablo, you said your brain died in that moment when your company had to lay off. I remember mine did a bit. It definitely did. But I was like, okay, 1 year, dude, let's go. Right. And it's different, right? There's no doubt it's different to be able to do that. But as we came to the end of that year, we were close on the revenue. We were really close. But there was one moment when the board of directors decided, okay, it's time. And it's that moment when you have to make a call. And the first, you have to tell your staff, you have to tell your client. We had clients with billions of dollars on our platform. And I remember I had to call one of our first clients, Standard Chartered. And here was the crazy thing. The dude I called, he'd been away on holiday. And when I was like, hey, how you doing? He's like, great. Let me tell you about my holiday. I've done this, had a great holiday. I did this, and I'm like, here we go. And, it's kind of these like comedic startup moments, which is real life, but you can only laugh. He's like, anyway, how are you? I'm like,
Oh God, thanks for asking.
not so magical. So, to ask your point, like, I don't think anybody can write the startup journey. Yeah, there was many other there's many other bits about it, but this clear statement was that we didn't anticipate the change in funding, we kept customizing. And then, you put your effort in to try to save it. And I'll tell you what happened in the end, but we did save
Yeah, I'm
something.
curious about the end. Did you end up winding it down, or did you find a way to exit some of the assets?
Interesting. So, it was the end of 23, so 1 year, and we really tried to sell it. And I tell you what, Pablo, like in that last few months, I'm a sales guy. We were at do you know the Singapore FinTech Festival?
I've heard of
like
it, yeah.
It has like 60,000 people. Like, it's a big event. we've always had a stall there, a stand there. Bamboo was always there. We were quite well known. We had our jackets on. We were like, and I'd booked this 6 months in advance. This is November. And basically the board of directors said, if we don't have a buyer by the end of November, this is mid-November, we're shutting. So I'm on my stand. Everyone's like, oh, how you doing? You're doing great. And anybody who could have brought us, I'm like, dude, if you got a second, and I would rip them to the side. I'm like, you want to buy it? Let's go. This is time. This is time. This is a deal. And I nearly got a deal done on Christmas Day. Yeah. Hey, look, so here's what happened. We had to wind it down. We had to liquidate it. And we had 9 buyers for our technology. We sold it 9 times. Quite a few of our clients brought it. Some new parties brought
like
it.
receivership sort of thing. Is that
the way it works in Singapore? Is the liquidator is appointed to sell the assets. And, I have never been through a liquidation before, thank God, and I hope not to again. But for example, let's say you liquidate a coffee shop and me and you turn up at the liquidation. Either you can buy the coffee machine or I can, because we both can't take it home. It's a physical asset. But when you're selling code, what you can do is say to people, look, you're getting a non-exclusive copy of the code, because we did have product. We had these amazing APIs.
of course?
And, quite a few of our clients brought our code and carried on our products and hired our people. And quite a few other wealth techs and banks were like, this is great code at a great deal. We'd like to buy that too. Of the billions of dollars of AUM, a lot of it lives on. All those customers live on our product.
That's pretty incredible. That's pretty incredible, honestly.
Our product lives on, and other companies have brought it, put their brand name on it. So Bamboo Tech is alive. I'm not going to say alive and well. Alive and well.
No, but live. Live and.
I'll take, Pablo, I'll take a live and.
It's more like in Gym Track, so it's good, man.
Did Gym Tracks? I didn't. That Gym Track.
No, we ultimately, we had to fully wind down, and we, we tried same thing, right? You tried then, you come really close, we came really close, and ultimately, just nothing there.
Yeah, man, it is, and as I think about it, obviously, like we all, I said to you, Pablo, I'm happy to talk about this. It doesn't mean I'm happy with the outcome, but the lessons for founders really, that, it really comes back to if you're building B2B and B2C enterprise, there's these really important decisions. If you've got for enterprise customers, how much do you charge them? That statement of work you have to get right. What happens if you're starting to lose on gross margin? Ask them about marketing budget for it beforehand. Be strong and say no to the middle road. Either charge so much it doesn't matter if it goes live, like millions, or stay on product. Because right at the end, Pablo, we had this ready-to-go robo-advisor for like $500 a month for any advisor to launch. So any financial advisor in America could launch their own robo-advisor on a multi-tenant robo, like a Betterment clone, a very simple Betterment clone, fully integrated, fully live for $500 a month. I sold 10 in like a week. I'm like, oh, dude, here we go. It works. Dude, it works. It works. It is right at the end. And I got like $5,000 of rev. It's not going to save anybody. But hey, if somebody told you I have 5,000 rev ARR in a week, you'd be like, okay, that's
I'm listening.
I'm listening now, man. But, so I think there's this, I don't have the answer. Should I have stayed just at my product from the beginning? Yeah, but maybe I wouldn't have got the logos and I wouldn't have got the $20 million and I wouldn't have built what I built. Should I charge more for customization? Yes, but then maybe I wouldn't have won the logos and I wouldn't have got the funding. And there's no excuses. We took some roads that were not the right, and we definitely hired. I think one thing I would have said is really think deeply about that hiring, because, getting rid of your office. And I tell you, Pablo, I remember one time, we had run out of money super hard, and there's some things you must pay. You must pay your staff, right? You must. And you must pay your AWS bill. Otherwise, they'll shut you off. But I remember we hadn't paid our rent for a couple of months. And I remember I kind of woke up on a Monday morning, I'm like, oh, dude, what if he locks the door? I remember running down to the office, right? Let's get that, sorted. And so there's these little decisions you make along the way to work out. But I think, the B2B, B2B2C is hard. And, there's no single answer on it. But, really take strong decisions, don't hire quickly, be product for margin. And I'd like to ask you a question, Pablo. You always get told founders never quit. After 8 years, I had to quit. What's your thought on this statement that founders never quit?
It is such a hard one to answer. Obviously, theoretically, I quit as well. And there's this kind of fine line, right, between kind of resilience and insanity. And I think you hear the stories of the founders that tried and tried again and tried again, and at some point it worked. What I've come to say I have this story I've told many times about a founder. It was a good friend of mine. I call him the founder cockroach, and I call him that because he's this guy who he just will never give up, and yet he's had 3 startups, right? Like the first one did fail, which you could think of as quitting. The second one, he and his co-founder had challenges, and so he ended up leaving, which you could think of as quitting. The third one, he had to go through, like he joined his co-founder. The other one was technical, had to remove that technical founder to bring in stronger technical person, had to go through 2 different versions of the products that completely fell flat. Finally, the third one took off, and it went from zero. You talked about kind of fast growth, like from 0 to 10 to 20 to 40 to 100K in 4 months. And then from $1 million a year to 10 million a year 2 years later to $100 million exit, a company that was not bootstrapped, but it only raised a few $1,000,000. So he made his kind of 10 plus sort of thing. And I think about all that and I'm like, I think for me, what it comes down to is if you want to be a builder, that's truly who you want to be, right? And for me, for example, like I'm more on the VC side now because that's what I enjoy. But if you want to be a builder, what you have to not quit is being a builder, because the reality is this product might not be the thing no matter how hard you push it. Even this whole startup idea might not be the thing no matter how hard you push it. But if you keep building with the right kind of mindset, the right principles, then with some little bit of luck, at some point, hopefully you'll hit something. Maybe it'll be like Marty, maybe it won't be nearly as big, but it'll be something that works. At least I truly believe that.
I appreciate you saying that, man, because when Bam, good job for your cockroach friend, even though that's probably not the right terminology. He's more a friend than a cockroach.
He's accepted it, though. He's accepted it. He's okay with it.
I actually...
I ran it by him.
I've read your LinkedIn post about him. I follow. Tell him I follow the cockroach. Look, I had been a corporate guy for 20-something years. This was, I'm not a literary man, but if anybody's read Dickens, Bamboo was the best of times, the worst of times. It was truly the greatest thing I ever did in my career. The lows of lows when, you understand that nothing's coming out. And after it failed, I did spend a couple of months in my bedroom crying. Well, not literally, but, figuratively, literally, and then this amazing thing happened. I wasn't, I needed, there's no secret for guessing that if you do 8 years at a startup, barely getting paid and don't get an exit, it's not the greatest financial reward in the world. That doesn't need a scientist to work that out. And so, I had been C-level in corporate. I'm like, all right, man, I'm 57 still. I'll go back to corporate. Like, you got to do. But Tech in Asia, which is one of the main media magazines online in Asia, wrote a story about it. And they asked me, they said to me, do you want to be, can we interview you? You want to be public about it? I remember thinking, oh man, do I really want to just tell everybody I suck? Like, is that what I want to do? And if I asked a dear friend of mine, he's a private equity investor, not an investor in me, he's just a friend who's and he's the friend that tells you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. And he said, Ned, you built in public, die in public. Absolutely die in public. So, because A, founders need it, and B. So I told them the whole story. They published a really nice article. It was like, these guys tried hard. They were ahead of their time. They got some stuff wrong. But what Ned was good at was sales. Like, they got so many logos, He published it. It got 500,000 views on LinkedIn. I got 1,200 DMs. And he asked me in the article, what are you going to do now? And I said, man, and I actually said, I don't know if I'm a builder. I don't know. I said, I love sales. I love startups. Maybe I'll help some startups sell that. Dude, that article came out. Seriously, like 15 startups ping me. Dude, do you want to be a startup advisor? Can we hire you to sales? And out of that was born my new startup, which is, I always call it a simple services business because every VC told me services business suck and they're simple. So it's my little go back at the world. I am embracing it. It is. I help. It's called the Sales Movement. I help B2B startups scale sales using content. Content means how they sell, how they use LinkedIn, how they build their brand. I've worked with over 25 startups. It's a one-person business. I mean, the revenues, I'm going to get, it's solid 6-figure revenue right out the gate. It's profitable. It's scaling. And I'm like, and my wife is like, hold on, you're not doing another startup, are you? I'm like, no, well, yes, no, it's services. It's not a startup. But
I'll do the same revenue as my last startup, but with 1 person instead of 100. How was that? Not bad.
Not yet, but year on year, I'm ahead.
Getting there, I'm sure.
But what it is, look, it's a cash flow business, but Pablo, damn, I love it, man. Like, damn, I love it. And maybe I didn't know I was a builder till I was 48 or an entrepreneur or whatever. but I'm selling sales now. I adore sales. I adore startups. And, maybe this is the journey that what didn't work. And I honestly, man, when you put on LinkedIn, any founder want to talk about not success, and I reached out to you, I follow a lot of your posts and I've looked at it, and we all think, oh man, everyone else got it right. And I'm the only one that didn't. You really suck and all that crap, right? And then you realize, your cockroach friend and other people, it's like, maybe this is just a thing you do and you don't know which one. My private equity friend, he knows who he is and he'll listen to this. He said to me, Ned, I think you'll be better off in 10 years than if Bamboo had exited for 100 million. You'll be a better person. You would build a better thing. And of course, I wish for my investors it worked out. I wish for my team. I wish for everything. But hey, wishing doesn't change the world and you got to crack on. And yeah, I think your phrase, that's why I ask people, I think I've come to realize that once a founder, always a founder. It doesn't mean it might be at the first firm.
Well, Ned, thanks so much for sharing the story with us. It's been great.
I appreciate it, Pablo. Thank you for having me on.
So picture this. It's months from now, years from now, and one of your founder friends, a really close founder friends of yours, guess what? Their startup went bankrupt. And it turns out if you had just shared the product market fit show with them, they would have learned everything they needed to find product market fit and to create a huge success. But instead, their startup has completely failed. You have blood on your hands. Don't let that happen. You don't want to live like that. It is terrible. So do what you need to do. Tell them about the show. Send it to them. Put it on WhatsApp. Put it on Slack. Put it where you need to put it. Just make sure they know about it and they check it out.